Today I'm going to give away a free t-shirt, bring you a Comic Hero Throwdown Showdown fight, bring you comics news, and reveal the books I bought this week. How y'all doing? I'm Victor, and you are watching the Comic Hero Show. Now kick that intro! Edition of the Comic Hero Show. I'm your host Victor Nunley, and I am the Comic Hero. This month is Brain Tumor Awareness Month. Now, a brain tumor is a mass or growth of abnormal cells in the brain. Now, many different types of brain tumors exist. Some brain tumors are benign or non-cancerous, and others are malignant or cancerous. Now, brain tumors can either begin in the brain, or it could be cancer that begin in other parts of the body and spread to the brain. Now, if cancer starts in one part of the body and it starts in one part of the body and spreads to another, it's considered metastatic, or in this case, metastatic brain tumors. Now, the signs and symptoms of a brain tumor vary greatly and depend on the brain tumor size, location, and the rate of growth. Now, general signs and symptoms caused by brain tumors may include new changes in patterns of headaches that gradually become more frequent and more severe, unexplained nausea or vomiting, vision problems including blurred vision, double vision, and loss of peripheral vision, gradual loss of sensation or movement in the arms and the legs, difficulty with balance, speech difficulties, tiredness, confusion in everyday matters, difficulty making decisions, inability to follow simple commands, personality or behavioral changes, seizures, especially in someone who doesn't have a history of seizures, and hearing problems. Now, this is a brain tumor awareness comic hero tee. And if you would like your very own, you can find them on my website, IamTheComicHero.com, for $17. Now, I personally know the daughter of two folks that I went to high school with, who was diagnosed with brain tumors and then sadly lost her life to brain tumors. To complications for brain tumors in 2009. And one thing about brain tumors, it doesn't discriminate in terms of age, gender, or race. You can be young, you can be old, you can be black, you can be white, you can be Asian, you can be Native American, you can be Hispanic, or you could be a boy, you could be a girl, you could be a man, you could be a woman. It doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate, and you know, when someone is diagnosed with cancer, when it's an adult, it's devastating. But then when a child is diagnosed with cancer, sometimes the words devastating doesn't even do justice. And one person, and then there was a legendary R&B singer, a very beloved R&B singer who died from complications of brain tumors 50 years ago, and I'm talking about Tammy Terrell. And then 3 years ago, one of the R&B singers of my generation, James Ingram, passed away from brain tumors. And then NFL Films president Steve Sable died from complications from brain tumors shortly after his father, Ed, was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And when it's cancer, I mean, when someone dies of cancer, it doesn't matter what kind of cancer it is. There just are no words. But I believe that now there's no cure for brain tumors, but I do believe that. But it can be treated. It can be treated with chemotherapy or radiation. But I believe one day that there's going to be a cure for not just brain tumors, but all forms of cancer. Best believe that. All right, I want to thank each and every one of y'all that watched the 400th episode of the show. This is episode 401. I did all that. It's time to move forward. And so, with that being said, it's time to give away a free t-shirt. Alright, on the last episode, I asked which Marvel character owns Area 51. Well, the correct answer is Iron Man. Now, if you said Tony Stark, I also accepted your answer because, after all, Tony Stark is Iron Man. It's like calling the skillet black. Alright, well, 12 people have answered correctly, and because they've answered correctly, names are entered in the drawing for a free tee. And that drawing takes place right now. So the winner of the free tee for this week's episode of the show is... Frank Mayo from Spring Hill, Louisiana. So congratulations, Frank. You win yourself a free Comic Hero tee. Alright, here's the question for next week, and this is a DC question. Which city in DC Comics was inspired by architecture from the cities of New York and Chicago? You know, a lot of folks ought to know the answer to this one, but I'm going to go ahead and give a hint anyway. It's only one word, and it's a really, really, really dead giveaway. Batman. Everyone who answers correctly will be in a drawing for a free tee on next week. And I said next week because I'm actually doing 3 episodes this week. I'm on this week's episode, I'm raising awareness of brain tumors. Then in a few days, I'm going to raise awareness of lupus, and then I'm going to raise awareness of mental health. And I'll remind y'all of all that at the end of the show. All right. Now, D'Angelo Blue from Warren, Ohio has requested a Comic Hero Throwdown Showdown fight, and this one features a character from the DC Universe who's immortal, going up against the Sorcerer Supreme in the Marvel Universe. Representing DC, we have the Phantom Stranger, and representing Marvel, we have Doctor Strange. These two are going to duke it out in a segment I like to call...
The Comic Hero Throwdown Showdown.
Welcome to the Comic Hero Throwdown Showdown. Today, it's the Phantom Stranger versus Doctor Strange. The Phantom Stranger possesses magic, immortality, cosmic awareness, and omniscience. Doctor Strange is a skilled martial artist who possesses mastery of magic and genius-level intellect. He also utilizes mystical artifacts such as the Cloak of Levitation and the Eye of Agamotto. Who would win? This wouldn't even be a fight. The Phantom Stranger would just wave his hand and strip Strange of his knowledge of the mystic arts. This would anger Strange, and he'd attempt to resort to hand-to-hand combat. Then the Phantom Stranger would wave his hand again and strip him of his knowledge of fighting. The Stranger would angrily ask, "Okay, you stripped me of the mystic arts and the ability to fight. What am I supposed to do now?" The Phantom Stranger would then wave his hand one last time and heal Strange of the nerve damage in his hands. The Phantom Stranger would then reply, "Go back to what you were doing before." "Oh, you're welcome, by the way." The Phantom Stranger wins. And that concludes this fight on the Comic Hero Throwdown Showdown. Alright, thank you D'Angelo Blue for that fight. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I'll have another one for next week. Now, y'all know my rules when it comes to the Throwdown Showdown segment. It has to be at least one comic book or manga character, and they can go up against another comic book or manga character, a video game character, or a very serious-minded cartoon character like Optimus Prime, Lion-O, or Voltron. Alright, now it's time for Comically Speaking. So without further ado, let's talk comics! Alright, there are 2 things we're going to talk about in this segment of Comically Speaking, and here's the first. Now, I recently read the first issue of She-Hulk. Now, there are, I want to say 4 issues of She-Hulk that are currently out right now, but I'm just getting around to reading the first issue. And to tell what's going on in this book, I would have to go all the way back to, I want to say, 2016. And this happened in the worst miniseries in the history of comics. I'm talking about Civil War II. In the very first issue, She-Hulk is part of a group of of Marvel superheroes to go out in space and try to prevent Thanos from coming to Earth. And in doing so, she almost loses her life. I mean, Thanos ends up severely beating her to the point where she almost died. But then when she recovered from her injuries, she started suffering from very severe PTSD and became pretty much a female version of her cousin Bruce. Of course, we all know Bruce Banner, Incredible Hulk and all that. And she eventually becomes a member of the Avengers and goes through psychotherapy with Black Panther. Well, Black Panther, one thing about him is that this man has so many degrees in different courses of study from different universities all over the world. And he's also a psychotherapist. And there were times where it helped and there were times where it didn't. But along the way, the Winter Guard from Russia ends up kidnapping She-Hulk and then infusing her with vampire blood, and then she becomes the Winter Hulk. And but then she ends up getting doused with a very lethal dose of gamma radiation, and it pretty much filters out all the vampire blood that was infused in her, and it also cured her of her PTSD, and she went back to her usual jovial, happy-go-lucky, and very strong personality. And here we are. And what happens is that she's struggling with living life right before she almost gets killed by Thanos. And it's not easy. As a matter of fact, Titania ends up showing up out of nowhere and trying to pick a fight with her. And then realizes that even when she does, and then realizes that she really doesn't want to fight her. And she's still trying to get back into practicing law. I mean, she was a very successful defense attorney in the comics. We all know that. Of course, She-Hulk's real name is Jennifer Walters, and she ends up joining up with this private practice, with the person over the private practice being a very demanding and sarcastic person. And then she ends up finding a place to stay with the help of Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp. And she gets settled in and find out that everything was still remained as it was even before the events of Civil War II. And then she goes and she gets a bath, and the next thing you know, she finds the Jack of Hearts the Jack of Hearts ends up being thrown through her apartment window, and he's unconscious, and that's how the first issue ends. This is really my first time reading an issue of She-Hulk from page 1 to the very end, and I honestly didn't know what I was missing. But this series is written by Rainbow Rowell with art by Roger Antonio, and this is pretty much like a She-Hulk is pretty much a superhero version of the Callista Flockhart character that she played in Ally McBeal. And I'm really enjoying it. I really love reading that. I can't wait to read the rest of the issues. Alright, now the second thing is that I recently got caught up with reading Action Comics. Now, there's this story arc going on in it called the War World Saga. Now, Superman ends up taking 2 founding members of the Authority and then a few other folks up into space. And the 2 founding members of the Authority he takes are Midnighter and Apollo. And then the other characters that he takes with him are the Natasha Iron Steel, Manchester Black, and OMAC. Just to name a few. And then there was another one, I can't remember what her name was. But she ends up, when they end up going there and they try to liberate all the slaves from different planets that were kidnapped and brought to World and enslaved, this character dies. And then everyone except Midnighter ends up becoming enslaved as well, including Superman. As a matter of fact, Superman is losing his powers, and he's not as strong as he once was. Well, Midnighter was told by Superman at the beginning, look, I know how y'all did things in the Authority, but if you're under me, you're not going to kill. Well, when everyone else got enslaved, he broke that rule. And he broke that rule having no regrets. As a matter of fact, his partner, Apollo, ends up getting badly injured. And he's being enslaved. And Midnighter says, "Oh no, I really don't care about the rules anymore." So he ends up killing some of the War Zuns, which are some of Mongol's minions. Oh, by the way, Mongol is the ruler of War World. So, Mongol is a legendary Superman villain. This Mongol, on the other hand, is the son of the Mongol we all know. He refers to himself as the Mongol who is, and he refers to his father, who he also killed, by the way, as the Mongol who was. But then somehow, some way in 1042, Superman ends up getting his powers back at the very end. Now, meanwhile, back on Earth, right before Superman and these other characters end up going into space, there was this character from War World who was a slave who ends up escaping and winding up on Earth. But when she winds up on Earth, she's gravely injured. And so Superman ends up placing her in some kind of incubation chamber to recover from her injuries. And what happens is that she's in there, but then while Lois and Jonathan, of course Jonathan, Superman and Lois' son, are watching her, she ends up somehow waking up, but in a lot of pain. So much pain that she starts emitting a lot of energy. Well, Lois ends up getting the help of the original Steel, aka Dr. John Henry Irons, and he tries to help out. But then, just as he is, they end up seeing Superman from all the way out in War World saying, "It's time to fight," and that's how number 1042 ends. And also, there was a backup story with Martian Manhunter. Now, Martian Manhunter, of course, is the last survivor of the planet of Mars. He's a founding member of the Justice League, and he's trying to adjust to living life in Metropolis. He ends up meeting this teenage girl who pretty much won't leave his side. And then there's this organization that kind of mirrors the Court of Owls from the pages of Batman, called themselves the Vultures. And then the Vultures, somehow knew a lot about Martian Manhunter's past and all the identities that he's taken up. And then they end up electrocuting him, and he pretty much becomes a combination of every character that he has ever every identity he's taken on, all rolled into one. Well, John ends up recovering from that, and he takes down the Vultures, but then he decides that wasn't enough, and he decides that he wants to be a police officer once again, which was, he was a police officer a while back, probably around the late 90s, early 2000s. But I also enjoy that because, Martian Manhunter is one of the least known and most complicated characters in comics, and I'm glad that he finally got a backstory, and hopefully we'll see a lot. But I'm really loving Action Comics. I was a little hesitant on reading this because growing up, I didn't really like when DC had, I didn't like stories written about Superman we put through the ringer. I especially didn't like when he was killed by Doomsday back in '92, and I didn't like when he ended up losing his powers and ended up getting these electromagnetic powers. But one thing about it is that with superheroes, sometimes superheroes have to be put through the ringer. Sometimes they have to, they have to be challenged, because other than that, they'd be very boring. And I'm really liking it. I'm really loving this, and I'm also loving She-Hulk, and I can't wait to read both books. All right, that's it for Comically Speaking. Now let's get to the comics I bought this week.
Comic books I bought this week.
say comic books I bought this week. These are comics that I got from Excalibur Comics on Free Comic Book Day. Now, the comic books I bought this week will actually be on the next episode. Alright, but here we go. First up, the best of 2000 AD. Bloodborne 2022. Bunny Mass Tales. Dark Crisis Special Edition. The Electric Black, The Children of Cain. Equilibrium. Oh, sorry, I thought that was a double cover, but this is the back of it. Pretty cool, huh? Art by the great Pete Woods. All right, next up, Judgment Day, Eve of Judgment. Well, actually, just Judgment Day, Free Comic Book Day. Eve of Judgment hasn't come out yet. Spider-Man Venom 2022. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Free Comic Book Day 2022. Now this is actually a double cover. Check this out. Now you're probably wondering who is that fourth character? That is Jenica. I mean that fifth character. I meant fifth. Sorry. Alright, next up is Valiant 2022. And finally, Marvel Voices Free Comic Book Day. Alright, that's 11, which brings the total number of comics that I bought since December of 1997 to 11,333. Alright, well, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Here's a question again for a free tee for episode 404. Which city in DC Comics was inspired by architecture from the cities of New York and Chicago? Now, y'all ought to know the answer to that one, but I'm still going to give a hint. Batman. I know it's a dead giveaway, but anyway, anyone who answers correctly will be entered in the drawing for a free tee on episode 404. And congratulations to Frank Mayo from Spring Hill, Louisiana, who won a free tee on this episode. All right, now this week I'm doing not one, not two, but 3 episodes of the show. Now I raised awareness of brain tumors on this episode. On episode 402, which I'm doing in a few days, I'm going to raise awareness of lupus. And then on episode 403, I'm going to raise awareness of a cause that really needs to be discussed. I mean, there's such a stigma to this cause, and it needs to be addressed, and that cause is mental health. And then on episode 404, I'm going to celebrate Memorial Day. Now, Memorial Day is when we honor the men and women that have served in any of the 5 branches of the U.S. military who are no longer with us. And it's whether they were killed in action, they went missing in action, they were prisoners of war, or they died later in life. This episode is for their families, and it's also in memory of them. And then on episode 405, the Summer of Superheroes 4. And I'm so glad to be doing this. They're good. I'm going to show some love to a lot of characters. Some of these characters in this calendar year are celebrating anniversaries. I mean, the first character I'm going to show some love to is Luke Cage, the original hero for hire. This is the character's 50th anniversary. And then I'm also going to show some love to Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, and Thor. This year marks their 60th anniversaries. And then every episode every week through the month of August is going to be superhero themed. This is something I started back in 2019, and I'm going to keep doing it every summer. All right, now I just want to apologize to everyone who has ever tried to order any product on my website, IamTheComicHero.com, in the shop section. For the longest time, I was only taking orders via PayPal, but I set up a Stripe account, and now you can order anything via credit card or debit card. So now it's all good. You can go ahead and order stuff. And I just recently started a line of Major League Baseball Comic Hero tees. So if you're a fan of any team in Major League Baseball, go ahead and buy you one. And then also, while I'm thinking about it, I did say that I did say that the very first character I'm going to show some love to in the Summer of Superheroes is Luke Cage. I'm also working on Luke Cage Comic Hero tee, and it should be up on there, and I'm encouraging everyone to buy one. This is my first time. I'm still a little new at administering a website. This is one that I built all by myself, and sometimes these things take time, especially when you're very unfamiliar with them. And it's okay to be unfamiliar with something, but just stay the course, and one day you're going to be very familiar. All right, and I just want to go ahead and say this: keep your thoughts and prayers for the city of Buffalo, New York. I mean, this past weekend there was a senseless acts of violence. I mean, some kid ends up driving 4 hours from his hometown of Buffalo, New York, and ends up killing 10 people at a grocery store in a predominantly black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York. And for all you people who think that racism is a thing of the past, you're dead wrong. Because this was premeditated, and it was an act of terror, and then it was an act of violence, and it was an act of white supremacy. I believe we've all been put on this world to love, and it doesn't matter what color you are. So instead of hate, love, because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that hate is too heavy a burden to bear. And I love each and every one of y'all. And if y'all have any suggestions for the show, anything, if y'all have any, if you want to make any fight requests for the Throwdown Showdown, if you want to ask questions for any question segment, go ahead and do so. Any input that comes from y'all never falls upon deaf ears with me, unless it is very tasteless and negative. Then I will not respond to it. All right, I'm Victor Nunley on the Comic Hero. I'll see you next time for episode 402. So until then, be safe, be blessed, be a hero, and go gray in May.